Okay, I have a question for you. What do you think of when you hear the word hope? I used to equate hope with kind of blind optimism. I hope this works out or I hope this goes well. Well, it turns out hope doesn't have anything to do with optimism. A couple of years ago, I went down a rabbit hole of this whole field of psychology of hope. And what I learned completely changed how I think of hope and made it something that not only I actively cultivated myself, but actually is the cornerstone of all my work with my clients and in my groups and even my keynotes. So I want to share this with you. And the reason I wanted to record this episode about hope is because I've been having so many conversations with people recently and who have told me that they are overwhelmed with all the uncertainty, all the change in the world and the world of work and politics, economy, AI, and that they're starting to feel kind of hopeless, like there's nothing they can do to control things or impact things. So I think it's very timely because hope, it turns out, is not optimism. It's not just kind of putting on rosy sunglasses and wishing everything will be amazing. It is a mental quality that you can actively cultivate. And research shows that people with higher hopefulness, they're more resilient, they are more successful. Kids with higher hopefulness actually do better in school. Leaders who lead with higher hopefulness are more effective leaders and their teams perform better. And I think there's no better time than now to actually practice cultivating our hopefulness. So I'm going to share with you what hope is according to science, the psychology of hope, a couple of strategies for how you can cultivate it. And I actually want to begin with one of my favorite examples of hope in action. And you've probably seen the movie Apollo 13. It's one of my favorites. And the movie, if you haven't seen it, it's based on a true story of the Apollo 13 mission that took place in 1970 that suffered an accident while in space. And what happened was the astronauts were forced to leave the main ship and use the lunar module. They were going to land on the moon. They didn't get to do that, but they had this lunar module. So they were forced to go into the lunar module and then try to use it to return to Earth. But there was a huge problem. The lunar module was not designed to support three of them for 96 hours, which is how long it would take. And so it didn't have enough oxygen, and the levels of carbon dioxide, CO2, were rising too quickly. The astronauts were going to run out of oxygen. They weren't going to make it. And this was a huge challenge. It's nothing NASA had ever dealt with. And if you've seen the movie, it's I've seen it many times. And every time I see that scene when they realize they don't have enough oxygen to get them to Earth, it's like this moment like, oh my God, they're dead. That's it. And so the scene, my favorite scene in the movie, is what happens when the engineers, the NASA engineers on Earth, they get together in a room and they need to figure out if there's anything they can do to reduce the level of carbon dioxide that is getting into the lunar module. And in the scene, one of the characters, I guess he plays an engineer of NASA. He comes into the room. If you've seen it, you're smiling because you know the scene. He comes into the room and he has this box with a bunch of stuff in it and he dumps it on the table. And you see like socks and tape and various tubes. And then he stands there and he says, we have to find a way to fit this. And he's holding a square, like a rectangle, plastic rectangle, into this. And he's holding a plastic kind of circular shape. And he says, so we have to fit this square thing into this circular thing using only the things that are on the table, because the things that were on the table were only the supplies that the astronauts could access up in space. They had them either in the lunar module or the main ship. And so again, seemingly impossible challenge. Like, how do you fit literally a square peg into a round hole using like socks and tubing? And punchline is they do it. They figure this out. They find a way to do it. They use socks and tubing and all kinds of things. And they do save the astronauts. They give them enough time. They lower the carbon dioxide that's getting into the lunar module, and they get the astronauts back to Earth. And it is an amazing example of hope in action, hope and great leadership. So now let's talk about, and we'll use this example, what is hope according to the psychology of hope? Well, Rick Snyder is often considered, Dr. Rick Snyder, as kind of the father of this area of science of the psychology of hope. And he defines hope as a mental state where you believe that you have a worthy goal. That's the first start. And you believe that when you work hard and try different things, that you can achieve it. And if you think about it, I'm going to actually say this one more time because this is really important. Hope essentially has three elements: having a worthy goal, something you really care about; believing that you have agency, you can do the work to make progress and reach it; and being willing to try different ways to get there. So recognizing that you're going to have to try different ways, that not single path is going to be the path. And if you think about the example from the Apollo mission, right? That's what the NASA engineers had to do. They had to practice hope because by all accounts, the situation was hopeless. The astronauts were using this lunar module. It was not designed to bring them back to Earth. They didn't have enough oxygen. The stakes are life or death, and things feel really hopeless. And yet, if we look at hope in action, what did the engineers on the ground do? First is they had a really worthy goal, right? Try to save the astronauts. I mean, that talk about a sense of meaning. And that's actually really, really important to increase your hopefulness, is the goal has to be something that's meaningful to you. So it's not, I'm going to drink more water. Okay, that's important. Actually, it's something I'm trying to do, but that's not really that meaningful, right? So you want whatever goal you have is to have a lot of meaning to you, right? So they had this goal to save the astronauts. Second is they believed that they could find a way to do it if they really worked hard, right? These were probably some of the smartest people in the world, and yet they'd never done this before. But they had this belief that if they work really hard and they work together, they could figure it out. And third, they tried all kinds of different ways to do it. And they don't show this in the movie, but actually, I'm a total geek. I remember reading about it. They tried all kinds of things at first that didn't work. And so we see those three elements of hope in action, right? Having a really worthy goal, believing that you can work hard to achieve it, and being willing to try all kinds of different ways to get there. And think about that. Think what would have happened if those engineers in the room were just like, oh my God, this is terrible, but this is hopeless. This is hopeless. There's nothing that can be done, and we're helpless. There's nothing we can do, right? Imagine what would have happened. The astronauts would have died. And so this is the power of hope and action. And I think that in times like ours, where there's so much change and uncertainty, hope is one of the most important qualities that you can cultivate. And if you are a leader and you lead a team of other people, I cannot think of anything more important than cultivating hope, not just within yourself, but in your team as well. And so just to give you a couple strategies, right? So the first one I mentioned, you want to have a really worthy goal. And especially if you're a leader leading others, this is part of your great leadership. This is part of your job as a leader, is to articulate a worthy goal, a worthy mission, to articulate a story that your team wants to be part of. That is challenging, yes, but that is meaningful, right? So if you're leading a team in particular, this is one of the cornerstones of great leadership, is helping your team see and connect to and really articulate this worthy goal, a better story about the meaning of your work, not just like, we got to get this done. So that's number one. The second is, how do you work hard towards a goal, right? Well, just do it doesn't quite work. So what you want to do is you want to commit to taking consistent daily action. This is something that I'm a huge believer in, that it's not every other day, it's not once a week, but every single day you take an action towards it. And that consistency does a couple things. One is, as you take these steps, that in and of itself teaches you, look, I have the agency, I have the ability to make progress towards my goal. That builds self-trust, that increases motivation, that sense of progress and ability to do that challenging thing builds confidence. It actually helps you to move forward. And if you're leading a team and you want to increase that degree of agency in your team, one of the things I really encourage you to do is to actually not hide the challenges, but invite and call your team members to step up and bring their best to them. And in your one-on-one conversations or your team conversations, you can actually talk about that, right? We have this challenging goal. Like, this is why it's meaningful. What can each of you do? How do you feel that you can best contribute? That question is incredibly activating. It gets us to think about, how can I step up? What is something I can do? What am I being called to contribute? It's a really powerful, activating question. And finally, the willingness to try different things. And this is so important because whenever we have something that we want to achieve, right, a goal that we care about, it's very easy to fall into one of two camps. And in my work with people, this is, I see one of two tendencies. The first is to say, well, I don't really know how to get there. I don't know the path, so I'm just not going to do it. And the other tendency is to overthink and overplan, like, these are exactly the steps I'm going to take towards that goal. Well, guess what? When you're doing something new and challenging, there is no path. By definition, you're doing something new. There is no path. So instead of trying to plan it or getting discouraged because you don't see it, start taking steps and take action with the goal of learning. This is so important. And this is, again, if you're leading a team, I really encourage you to talk to your team about this. So, taking action in order to learn, not to get it done perfectly. And I was doing a workshop on this with a leadership group a couple months ago, and one of the leaders raised his hand and he said, this just gave me a really big insight, because we try, to tell our teams, be more innovative, try different things, fail. But all of that kind of, it just sounds like talk. But instead, take action to learn. Make your metric of success. How much is this action helping me learn? And this is so powerful because as you take different steps, you learn as much as you can from each one, and then you can shift, you can adapt. 99% of decisions that you make in your life or your work are not final. You can shift, you can evolve. That you that has taken a step, that's a different person already. You have different perspective, however small that action is. And that is a big part of increasing hopefulness, is instead of looking for the perfect path or trying to overplan and overthink and plan every single step, just start taking steps, make your goal not perfection, but learning as much as you can. And as you take steps, you evolve, you shift, you gave yourself permission to try different paths towards your goal. And I think that, having done this for myself consistently, and working with people and having taught this to a lot of different leaders, there's a common thread when I see people take these steps that I've just shared with you and increase their hope and their hopefulness. A couple things happen. I see people become incredibly motivated, right? Motivation is an output. You cannot motivate someone. It's like telling someone to go to sleep. And you also can't psych yourself up. It's an output of being aligned with a goal you care about, a feeling like you can take action towards it, a feeling like you have agency. So whenever I see people increase their hopefulness using these strategies I shared, I see them become more motivated, more energized. And the biggest thing is incredibly greater confidence and self-trust. Not confidence that everything is going to work out perfectly. Not confidence that, oh, this step I take, it's going to be great. No, but confidence that you can take steps towards what you care about. You can shift. You can make progress. You can learn. And that is the foundation of the most important trait for helping you to achieve your goals, is that deep self-trust. Again, not confidence that everything will work out, but trusting yourself that you can take steps towards what's important to you. You can make progress. You can figure it out. And that self-trust is one of the most treasured qualities that we can all develop. I hope this is helpful. As always, I love hearing from you. Shoot me an email to nataly@happier.com. Let me know how you're practicing hopefulness. Let me know what other topics you want me to address. I am so grateful every week that you are sharing some of your time and your mind and your heart with me. I absolutely love doing this podcast, and I love hearing from you. So please practice your hopefulness. I don't think there's a better time than now than do it. And with that, that's all I have for today. I will be with you next week on screen if you're watching on YouTube, or as I like to say, in your ear if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform. Have an awesome rest of your week. Take care.